Total cost for me, for just the necessary to bring the LandCruiser back to life again and run on a good engine. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Motor Mouse Garage, and today I have something a little bit different for you. So, someone had asked me what it cost to rebuild the LandCruiser, and I thought this would be a good point to tell you what it cost me up to this point. And he also asked me essentially what type of skill level would I recommend for someone completing a job like this, how much it would cost at a shop, and questions like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up in here and I'm going to go over somewhat itemized lists. I didn't really spend the time to break down each individual cost because it was a lot. I ordered a lot from a lot of different places, but I think a general overview to give you an idea of how much like an OEM rebuild is going to cost you, where you can save some money, and where you maybe would spend a little bit more money. I don't know, it just depends. So let me get that set up and then we're going to talk about it. All right, guys, so I'm sorry I don't have anything interesting to look at in this room. Or throughout my house in general. But I'll throw in some off-roading clips that I couldn't really fit in anywhere else, and kind of just separate the audio. So, what did it cost to build an 80 series LandCruiser, basically from an engine standpoint, and completely replace everything new? Because that's essentially what I did. And you know, I could have saved some money along the way. Like I could have, you know, maybe got, you know, cheaper parts. I chose pretty much all OEM Toyota. I think the only OEM Toyota part I didn't buy was the high pressure power steering hose, because it was a ridiculous price for the exact same hose, literally. But anyway, so let me start off by, let me get into like, I guess the skill level aspect of it, right? So someone had asked me specifically, what skill level would you recommend someone attempt this repair at? So basically what we went over for the last, you know, couple months to probably almost a year now. And to be honest, it's really going to depend on the person, and I hate giving an answer. It depends. So let me frame the answer a little bit better. So if you are technically inclined, if you've worked with tools before, if you have a background in doing something technical, working with your hands, a blue collar skill, then I say you'll probably be able to do this job if you just take your time, regardless of what level you're at. And the reason why I say take your time is because, so I'm thinking about myself when I first started working on cars. The only car I had to work on was also my daily driver. So it didn't really help that was my first car. That I decided to actually like modify and do engine work to and do a bunch of power adding mods to it, and basically not the best idea. So a lot of those times, you know, I was doing very extensive projects over a weekend, or hitching rides from friends to work, and you know, doing it over a course of a week. If you're in that type of situation and your 80 series is your daily driver, and you need it to get back and forth to work or wherever, I hope the 80 series is not your daily driver that you have to replace the engine on, because that would be terrible. I wouldn't recommend, this is not a process you should rush through by any means necessary. And if you really need the car in a hurry, it's basically not going to happen, because it takes a long time to get all the parts to fix it the right way. And I think a lot of mistakes happen, especially to people who are newer to working on vehicles, all vehicles. This isn't just for the 80 series, this is for any vehicle in general. A lot of people get impatient and they start rushing things, and that's when things break. That's when things get left out. That's when mistakes are made. That's when parts are reused that really should not be reused. So I definitely think that you should take your time. Definitely take your time with the build. I think that was my biggest mistakes early on in my working on cars experience, before I had any professional training at all, right? And I'm not discouraging you, even if you're not technically inclined. I do think Toyota in general is a really good platform to start on, because there's not anything that's like too outrageous. There's a lot of documentation available, so there's a lot of manuals out there. You have the factory service manual floating around. It's literally in the link in the description for the 80 series. So if you need the factory service manual for the 80 series, that's essentially what I followed when I didn't know what to do on a certain aspect. Or I didn't know torque specs, for example. They're all in the FSM. Everything is there. You just have to kind of look for it, right? I would say it's an easy project for a beginner to do, given enough time and resources, right? So the main reason I wanted to do this with as little tools as possible, I didn't, do this at a shop. I didn't do this. I literally did it mostly outside and in my garage, right? Just to show that it could be done. It's not like a simple task. I mean, I find it hard to relate to certain people, because some people look at the stuff that I do on this channel and they're like, oh dude, I'd never be able to do that. And I'm like, honestly, you probably could. Like, it's not that overly difficult to do. So with all that being said, I would highly recommend this not be your daily driver, and just spend time with the vehicle and do it. Even if you're not technically inclined, we all have to start somewhere. Like, we all have to learn from nothing, basically. Nobody comes out of the womb knowing everything about automotive, everything, regardless of what some seasoned individuals might tell you, right? So I say do it. Understand what you're getting into, and I'll talk about price later. It's not cheap. Spoiler alert, building old Toyotas, not as cheap as everyone makes it seem. Which I kind of knew getting into, right? So that comes down to the next question, which is, would you recommend a shop do this, or would you recommend someone attempt themselves? And in my personal opinion, I have a very hard time trusting shops or trusting mechanics in general that aren't me, because I've worked in the industry before. I know the people that work at some shops. I know the people that work at even some dealerships. Not exactly the best technicians ever, and it sucks that it is that way, but it is. If you have a good shop near you, so if you have if you're near I don't know, Fit Garage in Oregon, for example, if you're in Caveman Exchange here in El Paso, that guy, the owner of Caveman Exchange here knows his stuff. I went really with him personally, and I literally saw him in action. Guy's got a ton of experience. Or if you're in I don't know if Joey from Wits End actually does mechanic work or conversions. I'm sure for the right price he would do it. Go someone that has a ton of experience in your vehicle's platform specifically, would be my recommendation if you want a shop to do it. Now, let's get into pricing. What my estimation of pricing would be if you were to take this kind of job to a shop. So if you have a shop that is willing to do this kind of work, right? Which is the hard part to figure out. But if you do have that, I'm going to make some estimations based off of what I would normally charge when I was working on cars outside of work, and an estimated timeline. So me personally, I worked on European cars. So I worked on BMW, I worked on Jaguar Land Rover. Primarily, that's what I'm brand certified in. I worked on Mercedes. I worked on, basically stuff like that. I didn't really work on anything like off-road 4x4. I guess you can consider Land Rover, but yeah, these were like brand new Land Rovers. These owners weren't taking them off-road, dude. But that's what I would work on, right? So in my own personal time, I would charge, depending on the vehicle, I would charge anywhere between $150 per labor hour to $180 per labor hour. And I know what you're saying, that sounds like a lot. And quite frankly, it is. And I would not change that price, simply because it takes a lot of effort for me to be able to do that, or did at the time, right? So I was working from my house, so from the garage that I built this LandCruiser in, that's where I would do all my work, right? And I don't like overestimate the hours I spend on it. So I would charge that amount of money, but I wouldn't charge like book time. I would charge the amount of time I would estimate that I could personally get the work done, right? So like if I was doing, I don't know, brakes, for example. I know it only takes me about 2 hours to do rotors and pads on a car max. So I'm only going to charge 2 hours worth of labor hours. I'm not going to charge you like 17 hours to do a brake job. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I did my pricing schedule. But so let's say I would assume a shop, depending on where you live, because it's going to vary. Let's say anywhere between $100 to $150 an hour is what your shop's hourly rate is. And we'll meet it right in the middle, and we'll say $125 an hour labor rate. This is only labor. So we're not talking about parts yet. We'll get to that. In my estimation, I didn't look up book times. I don't have access to all data anymore. And I didn't really see anything in the factory service manual about labor times. But in my estimation, I would probably say you could complete this job the way I did it, which was basically an R&R of the short block, right? You could probably do it in like 16 hours. I would think 18 hours at most. So if I had a full shop and I had a lift and I had all the parts available to me, the labor hour, I would assume it would take me 2 full days to pull the engine out, pull it apart, put it together, put it back in, and get it back to the customer, right? So 16 to 18 hours, I would estimate. And that might be a generous estimation. So let me explain where I'm kind of getting the idea behind 16 to 18 hours. So for reference, book time, which means like the time warranty would pay for a Land Rover LR4, which is a completely different vehicle, right? The book time to replace that engine was 32 hours, factory warranty time, right? So 32 hours, but that engine and drivetrain was a lot more involved to replace than the 80 series. So that one involved taking off the body off of the frame of the vehicle and then pulling the engine out, getting all the parts, swapping them onto the new engine, and putting everything back in and getting it running again. So I think book time was around 32 hours for that. So a majority of the work week, right? I did not feel that difficulty or that time. I wouldn't say it's difficult to do an LR4 engine. It's just, there's a lot of steps and it's very time consuming, right? I would probably estimate that at about half of what the LR4 is for the 80 series, because everything comes apart extremely easily. Realistically, that engine is held on there by, the cross member bolts underneath, the motor mount bolts, and the exhaust and the wiring. And it literally comes right out after that. And drive shafts, of course, but, I digress. So let's say a shop charges $125 an hour, and we'll go on the high side and we'll say they're charging you 20 labor hours because it's a customer paid job or whatever. So do some quick maths as I don't open my calculator and I open my alarm. 125, we'll say times 20. Say 20 hours. And that's probably low, to be honest. I would probably err on the side of let's do 150. Let's do 150 an hour, 20 hours of labor. That's about $3,000. You know, in 2021, or sorry, I don't even know what year I'm in. In 2023, I think $150 an hour shop rate is probably a steal. So you're probably looking at the upper echelon of anywhere between $180 to $200 an hour now. So I haven't professionally worked on cars since 2019, 2020, as far as like doing it at my own labor rate, right? So you're looking at $150 an hour labor hour. And if you don't know and you have a shop in mind that you want to do this, give them a call and be like, hey, like I was just curious, like ask them, be like, what would you charge to do like an engine swap on an 80 series? If they understand what that is, or just ask them what their labor hour is and you know how much they would usually charge for like an engine swap, and they'll probably give you an answer. But here's my guess: $150 an hour at $20, 20-hour labor time. So that's about $3,000 of labor time. And I think that's reasonable, because it's, if anything, a little bit on the low end, because they still have to pay the technician to do that work, right? And then they have all the shop fees and the shop maintenance that they add on top of it. Basically, everyone's got to get paid off of this job, right? Parts department, whatever, you know, if there's one guy, then there's one guy, whatever. So you're looking at $3,000 right there. The real expense for this whole job comes down to the parts themselves. So I ordered pretty much everything factory Toyota. So everything that was available from Toyota came from a Toyota part, from a dealership, or from Joey from Wits End. I probably spent like easily $3,000 to $4,000 in just rebuild parts alone at Wits End. So shout out to Joey, pretty cool dude. Anyway, I digress. And my big expense, I think my biggest single expense was definitely the engine block, right? So the engine block by itself cost me, shipped to my door from Olathe Toyota in Kansas. That cost $4,273.97 shipped to my door. So a majority of the money went there. And that's the first point I want to bring up, is you can probably save money by doing something similar to what Ricky from RM Garage did. He rebuilt, so he basically took the pistons out, took the block to a machine shop, got it rehomed, and put new pistons and rods and bearings in it, right? And you can probably shave off about $2,000 of that cost. I'd say $1,000 to $2,000 shaved off. Estimation. I don't know. Ask Ricky if that seems accurate, right? Now the rest, so my total cost for the build, this is not including transfer case gears because those were unnecessary and I just wanted to do those. And this isn't including like anything else that you've seen, like any of the nice to have. So like bumpers, lights, interior pieces, none of that. So this is just talking about the engine itself and rebuilding the powertrain essentially. Total cost for me, $11,050.46. So total cost of the build was just over $11,000, which you're thinking, damn, that's a lot of money. And depends on who you ask, because, and here I go into justifying the price as to why I just spent $11,000 rebuilding a 25-year-old vehicle. But I mean, think about it. Think about any 4x4 on the market today, Toyota 4Runner, a Jeep, Gladiator or Rubicon, or anything like that, right? Anything new. Number one is not going to be as capable of as the 80 series. I'm going to be honest, dude. Like, when I first bought this car, I I was skeptical of the hype that the vehicle gets, right? And I think it's nice, or it's smart to go into this with a healthy criticism or a healthy skepticism of like, all right, what can this vehicle actually do? I knew it was heavy, allegedly. We'll get to that later. But I knew it was heavy, and I was like, I don't know if this thing could really outwheel my 4Runner, which weighs basically nothing and is a pretty capable vehicle, right? Well, I am here to tell you it is a capable vehicle. It is unbelievably capable for what it is. And this is not me justifying my purchase. Like I said, I'm not a guy that is just like only cares about one car or one brand. You know what I mean? Like, I've owned Subarus, I own a BMW currently, I own a Volkswagen, I own 2 Toyotas, I've had multitude of cars throughout my life that I thoroughly enjoy driving, right? But when it comes to like off-road capability, I've only had like the 4Runner, and which is a 93 solid, or not solid front axle, it's a independent front suspension. Love it to death. And then you've got the 80 series, which is an extremely capable vehicle. And, you know, I haven't done anything crazy with it. I want to go back. I want to do, like, I have to go find more challenging trails near me, because all the ones I thought were moderate for the 4Runner ended up being extremely easy with the 80 series. It just doesn't struggle. It does whatever you ask it to do. And I think that's a very powerful statement for a car that's 25 years old. So back to the cost in general. So think about the cost of a newer vehicle that everyone raves about. Like, everyone loves the the 5th gen 4Runner. Everybody loves the Tacoma, the newer body style Tacoma. Everyone's going crazy about the new LandCruiser that's coming out, and the Lexus GX 550, right? To me, and this might hurt a lot of feelings, I don't know. To me, those cars and newer cars, even the Ford Bronco, the Raptor's an exception, the Ford F-150 Raptor, that thing's pretty crazy for a new car. All right, I give respect to that. Outside of the Jeep world, all the Toyotas and Fords and other off-road marketed vehicles, they're not meant for doing things that I want to do, things that like real, I don't want to use the term real off-roaders. I feel bad when I say that. But people that like actually want to beat their stuff up and break things, they're not really geared towards that kind of abuse. So you're going to spend, anywhere between $40,000 to $100,000 to get one of these vehicles for it to be a fraction of as strong and capable as the 80 series. So if you remember in my first video, the total cost, I spent $12,000 buying the vehicle, right? I spent another $11,000 basically restoring the vehicle to 0 miles. So I'm in it total cost. I'm in it just over 23,000. Name me a capable vehicle, a new vehicle, that you can get for that price that is that capable and that reliable as the 80 series, and I bet you can't. I'm willing to bet you can't. Like, no hate on the Broncos. I think they're awesome. No hate on new Jeeps. No hate on Jeeps, period. I really like Jeeps. Like, I've never owned one, but I understand that Jeep is like the last bastion of 4x4 and off-roading vehicles, to be honest. I don't think the new Toyota LandCruiser is going to meet any LandCruiser expectations, if I'm being honest. I think it's going to be basically a bigger 4Runner, quite frankly. I don't think the Bronco kind of holds up to the old school Broncos, and potentially the Jeeps might not either, but I do think the newer Jeeps are pretty good. So like the Jeep JL, I still want a Gladiator, dude. Like, I don't know what it is about a Gladiator Rubicon, but I think that would be an awesome car to have. And I think it's a very capable vehicle. You can put 35s on most Jeeps stock, 37s even. So, and I think that's great because Jeep still has the end goal in mind, right? And I think Toyota and Ford and anyone else making an off-road vehicle kind of forgot about that aspect of it. But You know, I'm not disparaging you if you own these vehicles. Like, dude, go out and have fun with it either way. Just understand, for me, this is what I wanted out of a vehicle. I wanted this out of an 80 series. And I got way more than I had ever bargained for. Because it turns out I feel more confident wheeling in the 80 series than I ever did the 4Runner, which is pretty insane because I've tackled some pretty gnarly trails with the 4Runner. Or what I thought was gnarly. I might take the 80 series back and be like, oh, wow, I'm actually, you know, kind of a and that wasn't gnarly at all, right? And, you know, so you have to factor that in too. Like, do you want to spend that money on a new car, or do you want to spend that money on an older, you know, capable, off-road capable vehicle? So obviously I'm getting a little bit into the weeds here, but you're trading like interior features, which I don't really care about interior features. Like, I don't know if I'm just a weirdo. I don't care about lane departure assist. I don't care about like Apple CarPlay, about, I don't know, wireless charging of my cell phone. I don't give a shit about any of that. I don't really care for a lot of those features. I don't like how new cars feel fake when you drive them. They all feel the same. Like, I drove my buddy's Bronco, I drove my buddy's Tacoma, and they all feel like my Jetta, which is a 2019. It's soulless, you know what I'm saying? And that's not what I want out of a vehicle. Like, and I think if you're watching this channel, that's probably not what you want either. Do I think they make pretty decent daily drivers? Yeah, absolutely. You know, they're super comfortable on the road, and you can still do a lot with them off-road. You know, maybe it's a give-take, best of both worlds. So yeah, anyway, bringing it back in, was it worth it? Yeah, dude, I think it was a lot more worth it than I thought it was going to be. Literally, I bought the 80 series to kind of start a YouTube channel. Like, I did want an 80 series, obviously. I'm not going to buy a vehicle I didn't want. But the intention was to just show people what can be done with not having like a whole professional shop and just having like tools. And that was kind of the intent behind the YouTube channel, and, you know, going out on adventures and doing shit. I never even intended this channel to be a mechanic channel, believe it or not. It just so happened that 2 months into the ownership of the 80 series, it blew up. And so I had no other choice, and now I'm a mechanic channel, right? But no, I do want to bring you guys like more off-roading content, more structured off-roading content, I guess. But I don't know, leave your comments if that's something you want or not, you know. So let's say you decide to have a shop do this. You can add approximately $3,000 onto that cost. So you're looking at like $14,000 with parts and labor to perform the same job that I did for $11,000, right? I would say that's a pretty rough estimate of what it would cost you to do this at a shop. So you're saving that, you know, a couple $1,000s for you to do it yourself. But it's not just about like saving money. That's not why I did this. I did this to show you that you can do this too. Like, if you can follow my videos for the most part, you can probably fix damn near any vehicle, dude. Like, except for Audi and Volkswagen. Like, they're a whole different animal, right? But, you know, the 80 series doesn't have complicated electronics. It's pretty simple. There's nothing like weirdly placed in there where you need some kind of like special tool to just get one bolt out, like is common in Land Rovers. You don't have any, I don't even think, this isn't even like a CAN bus communication, so you don't have, like I said, anything weird that's going to happen with electronics. It's just very simple. It's a very simple vehicle, and that's what I like about it the most. You know, I think the most specialty tool you'll need is a timing light, which you can just go borrow from your parts store, your local parts store. Pay them $20 or whatever that costs, and you can get a timing light and time it when you're done. And that's pretty much it. But yeah, dude, I would say if you're on the fence about doing this, if you can set aside the budget for parts, because parts will be expensive. And like I said, you could probably save some money on, like, you know, not buying a brand new engine from Toyota, building it yourself maybe. maybe if your wiring harness is in good condition, that's another $600 you can save. Because remember, I did also buy a brand new wiring harness. Maybe you had some other decent parts in there that you weren't really ready to get rid of. Maybe you didn't want to do the whole timing for whatever reason. Please do the timing. Just please do it. Why not, dude? But there are opportunities to save a little bit of money here and there compared to what I was doing, right? You don't have to spend a shit ton of money to rebuild it. The main reason I did is because I knew where I wanted to take this. Like, I knew literally the week we got it done, the very next weekend, I drove all the way from Texas to Idaho, stayed there for a week and lived out of it and drove back. That was a 24-hour drive there and back. So 24 hours there, 24 hours back. So I knew I wanted to be reliable. I know I go up to Colorado at least once or twice a year. I'm planning on going to Florida from West Texas, dude. That's a 28-hour drive. I plan on driving this thing, man. So I wanted it to be absolutely perfect. Like, I wanted it to be 100% reliable, and that's why I spent so much money on it. And that's why, again, if you plan on doing these things, plan to spend a lot of money, I don't understand why people are willing to, well, okay, I do understand, like, a lot of people aren't like car people. But just don't buy cheap parts and expect it to last you forever. I think that's the misconception with Toyota is they're like, oh yeah, parts are cheap for Toyota. I'm like, yeah, when you get them from China, but then they don't last forever. Like, they last like a year at most, tops. So just buy the OEM parts. Buy parts from Japan. Buy parts from, Saudi Arabia. Buy parts from UAE. Like, buy those parts. Buy parts from Australia, dude. So many things are made for the 80 series in Australia. Like, it kind of like pisses me off that they have all the best like aftermarket parts for 80 series over there. But it makes sense because, that's a common vehicle over there, I guess. But yeah, only you can make the decision of whether or not you want to do this for yourself. But I definitely think that you should, especially if it's a skill you wanted to learn. This will teach you that skill for sure, at least on some level. And here's the other thing. If you do this work yourself, there is not going to be one part in this vehicle that breaks at a future date that you don't know what the problem is pretty much immediately. If any part breaks in this drivetrain, I'm going to know what it is because I've literally touched every single part on this vehicle already. Like, I've done everything to this. And this isn't like a finalization video either. Like, I'm not going to be, moving on to something else. Like, I will eventually. I'm going to slowly start bringing in the BMW because I need to like do some more work with that, and I don't want to waste it. Like, I want to show you guys, but I still have a lot of stuff I want to do to the vehicle. I've got a couple of videos coming up in a row, all of the 80 series. So we're not done by a long shot. I still want to lift it. I still want to put bigger tires. I still want to put gears. I still want to put lockers in it. Like, there's a lot I want to do. But, I guess for just bringing it back from the dead of a blown head gasket, then, yeah, you're probably going to look at spending anywhere between, I'd say $8,000 to $15,000, depending on if you bring it to a shop or do it yourself. So just be prepared for the amount of money it costs to rebuild one of these things. Do it right the first time, because if not, you're going to spend more money later. And don't be afraid to dive in. As long as you have a space to do it, so that's important because the drivetrain's pretty big, and as long as you have the tools to do it, which you can accumulate over time, you can do it. Like, it's not an impossible task, And like I said, Toyotas are like Legos, man. They're like adult Legos. They really go together quite easily, especially with the amount of resources out there to build them. So Anyway, I hope that clears some things up about this whole process and what it takes to rebuild an 80 series LandCruiser. And if you have any further questions or want to know any information outside of that, like if you want, I can do like an itemized list of every part that I bought, which will take some time, but I could do it if that's requested. But yeah, that's pretty much going to be it. So if you have people who have this question and that are wondering the same thing, how much does it cost to rebuild an 80 series, go ahead and share this video with them. Give me a like. Leave me some comments if you have your own opinions, or maybe I missed something, maybe I was off the mark on something, or maybe you agree with me. And if that's the case, put it in the comment section. Subscribe if you're not subscribed, please. We got more to come on the 80 series. We've got more to come with a BMW E36 M3, and there's another project that I don't really want to divulge yet because I need to work out all the details on it. But I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be another 4x4 project, and I think it's going to be awesome. But with that being said, guys, thank you very much for listening to me rant for like 40 minutes. Have a good one, and I will see you next week.